This is the moment Formula One didn't want you to notice. Right after the Japanese Grand Prix, Max Verstappen, the most dominant driver of this era, asked one question that sent shockwaves through the paddock. Is it worth it? That single sentence has now triggered internal concern at the highest level of the FIA. Because we're not talking about just any driver. We're talking about a four-time world champion, still in his prime, openly questioning whether he should walk away from the sport. And here's the part that makes this even bigger. He didn't just say it. He acted on it. While his own team stayed behind for critical development work, Verstappen left Formula One entirely and went to drive somewhere else. A completely different category. A completely different mindset. Which tells you one thing. This is no longer frustration. This is a decision in progress. And if Formula One loses Verstappen right now, it doesn't just lose a driver. It loses its biggest star, its biggest storyline, and possibly the entire direction of the sport. Subscribe now, because what Verstappen is planning could change Formula One forever. At first, it sounded like emotion. Just frustration after a difficult race. A car that wouldn't respond. A weekend that didn't make sense. But when you listen carefully to what Verstappen actually said, this goes far beyond frustration. Because he didn't talk about fixing the car. He didn't talk about improving performance. He questioned the entire experience of being in Formula One. And that's where everything changes. Because drivers complain all the time. Balance issues. Strategy calls. Team decisions. That's normal. But questioning whether it's worth being there at all. That's different. That's personal. And the context makes it even heavier. Japan wasn't just another race. It exposed something deeper. Verstappen wasn't fighting for the win. He wasn't even fighting at the front. He was stuck. Trapped behind slower cars. Lap after lap, trying to overtake, and failing. And for a driver known for aggression, precision, and control, that's not just a bad race. That's a loss of identity. Because Verstappen's entire driving style is built on dominance. On feeling the car. On pushing beyond limits others can't reach. But in Suzuka, none of that was there. The car was unstable. Unpredictable. Almost impossible to trust. And when a driver loses trust in the car, everything collapses. Confidence. Rhythm. Instinct. But here's the part most people didn't notice. He didn't sound angry. He sounded detached. Calm. Almost distant. And that's far more dangerous. Because anger means you still care. Detachment means you're already pulling away. And this is where the pressure shifts directly to the FIA. Because this isn't just about Red Bull. This is about the direction of the sport itself. The new regulations were supposed to create closer racing. More efficiency. More sustainability. But for drivers like Verstappen, they've created something else. Less freedom. More management. Less driving. More calculation. And that's not what made him who he is. This is a driver who built his career on instinct. On raw control. On feeling every corner, every limit, every movement of the car. Now, that connection is fading. And once that connection is gone, the motivation starts to disappear with it. But here's where it becomes critical. Because Verstappen didn't just question the sport. He compared it to something else. Something he clearly enjoys more. And that comparison might be the beginning of the end. And this is where everything quietly crosses a line. Because while Red Bull stayed in Suzuka, working on the future, working on development, working on solutions, Verstappen left. Not for rest. Not for recovery. But to drive. Somewhere else. A completely different car. A completely different category. And more importantly, a completely different feeling. The Nürburgring. No complex energy management. No artificial limitations. No unpredictable behavior. Just driving. Pure, direct, raw driving. And that contrast is what makes this so serious. Because Verstappen didn't just complain about Formula One. He showed, without saying it directly, what he prefers instead. And once a driver rediscovers enjoyment outside the sport, coming back becomes much harder. But here's where it gets even more revealing. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't curiosity. This is becoming a pattern. A direction. Because everything Verstappen has said over the past months points to the same idea. If it's not fun, it's not worth it. And that word, fun, might sound simple. But in Formula One, it means everything. It means connection with the car. It means control. It means feeling like the result depends on you. Not on systems. Not on limitations. Not on things you cannot control. And right now, that feeling is disappearing for him. But here's the part that should worry the FIA the most. Because Verstappen is not just any driver expressing frustration. He is the reference point of the current generation. The benchmark. The one others measure themselves against. So when he starts stepping away mentally, others start paying attention. They start asking the same questions. Quietly. Internally. And this is how shifts begin. Not with announcements. Not with dramatic exits. But with small decisions. Like choosing another track over an official test. Like speaking more openly. Like questioning things that were never questioned before. And suddenly, it's no longer about one driver. It's about a trend. And trends in Formula One are dangerous. Because they spread. Slowly. But inevitably. But now everything leads to a much more uncomfortable possibility. Because if Verstappen is already exploring life outside Formula One, if he's already finding something that gives him what F1 no longer does, then the real question is no longer if he will leave. It's when. And more importantly, what happens to the sport when he does. And that's the point where the FIA stops seeing this as just a driver issue, and starts seeing it as a structural problem. Because losing Verstappen is not just about losing talent. It's about losing credibility. The best driver in the world is supposed to represent the peak of the sport. The ultimate expression of speed, control, and competition. But if that same driver is publicly questioning the value of being there, then what message does that send? Not just to fans, but to future drivers, to sponsors, to manufacturers. Because Formula One doesn't just compete on track. It competes for relevance. And right now, that relevance is tied to names like Verstappen. So when he starts to pull away, the entire system feels it. Quietly, but immediately. And this is where the panic begins. Not visible. Not official. But real. Because behind the scenes, there are only a few things the FIA can actually control. Regulations. Technical direction. The way the sport evolves. And suddenly, all of those things are being questioned at once. Because Verstappen's frustration is not random. It's specific. Too much complexity. Too much energy management. Too little freedom to just drive. And here's the problem. Those elements are not small adjustments. They are the foundation of the current era. Which means fixing them is not simple. It requires change. Real change. And change in Formula One takes time. But time is exactly what they might not have. Because the next few weeks are critical. Meetings between teams. Discussions about regulations. Decisions that could reshape the direction of the sport. All happening under pressure. Because now, there's a deadline no one can ignore. Miami. The next major race. The next moment where everything will be evaluated again. The car. The feeling. The direction. And most importantly, Verstappen's mindset. Because if he arrives there and nothing has changed, then this situation doesn't calm down. It escalates. And once it escalates, it becomes very difficult to contain. But here's the final layer. The one that connects everything we've talked about. Because this isn't just about whether Verstappen leaves. It's about why he would leave. And that reason is something the FIA cannot afford to ignore. Because if the problem is the sport itself, then losing Verstappen is just the first consequence, not the last. And that's the real fear. Not the exit of one driver, but the possibility that he's simply the first to say out loud what others are already thinking. Which brings everything back to the same question. The one that now hangs over the entire future of Formula One. If the best driver in the world no longer enjoys driving in Formula One, then what exactly is the sport becoming? And that's where everything finally comes together. Because this isn't just about frustration. It's not just about one bad car. It's not even just about one driver thinking of leaving. This is about a breaking point. A moment where Formula One is being forced to confront something it has been ignoring for years. What do drivers actually want? Because for a long time, the answer was simple. Speed. Freedom. Control. The ability to push beyond limits and feel the car respond instantly. That's what built legends. That's what built Formula One. But now, that foundation is shifting. The sport has become more complex, more calculated, more dependent on systems that drivers don't fully control. And for some, that evolution makes sense. It's modern. It's efficient. It's the future. But for drivers like Verstappen, it feels like something is being lost. Something essential. And once that feeling appears, it doesn't go away easily. Because this is not about adapting. It's about identity. Verstappen is not just a driver who wins. He's a driver who feels, who reacts, who operates on instinct. And when you take that away, you're not just changing how he drives. You're changing why he drives. And that's the most dangerous shift of all. Because once the why disappears, everything else follows. Performance drops. Motivation fades. Decisions change. And suddenly, leaving is no longer unthinkable. It becomes logical. But here's the part that defines everything. Because if Verstappen leaves due to the direction of the sport, then his exit becomes more than a retirement. It becomes a message. A signal to every driver, every team, every fan. That something fundamental is wrong. And that's what the FIA is really facing right now. Not just the risk of losing a champion, but the risk of being exposed. Because if the best driver in the world walks away and says, "This is no longer worth it," then the problem is not the driver. It's the system. And systems in Formula One are not easy to change. They are built over years, negotiated between teams, locked into long-term visions, which means any real solution will come too late for this moment. And that's why the next decision matters more than anything. Because Verstappen is standing at a crossroads. Stay, adapt, accept the new Formula One, or leave, and choose something that gives him back what he feels he's losing. And whichever path he chooses will define far more than his own career. It will define how the world sees Formula One moving forward. Because if he stays, the sport survives this moment. But if he leaves, then this becomes a turning point. The moment people look back on and say, that's when everything started to change. And now, everything comes down to one final, unavoidable reality. Formula One doesn't just need Verstappen. It needs what Verstappen represents. And if it can't give him a reason to stay, then the real question is no longer about his future. It's about the future of the sport itself.